A lot of people think that you need a six-figure salary to become a millionaire, but that's just not true. In fact, some of the world's wealthiest people started with almost nothing. The secret to become a millionaire on low income isn't about how much you earn, it's about how you use what you earn. So even if you feel like you're stuck in a paycheck to paycheck situation, don't click away, because in today's video, I'm going to show you how you can build real wealth even on low income and hit millionaire status faster than you think. If you guys ever read the book of Psychology of Wealth, in that book, there's a story about a janitor and gas station attendant named Ronald Read who lived very frugally, but he invested steadily in blue chip stocks for most of his life, and he quietly accumulated over $8 million. So let's use a very simple example to Ronald Read. We have a school custodian here who makes $38,000 a year, drives a 12-year-old Honda Civic, and shops at thrift stores. Let's call her Maria. Last month, she celebrated crossing the $1 million net worth mark at age 55. She's never made more than $42,000 in a single year, and she never inherited any money, and she never got lucky with crypto, altcoins, or meme stocks. If you think becoming a millionaire on low income is impossible, I'll show you exactly how this school custodian and other people have done it before. One truth that the financial industry doesn't want you to know is that your income doesn't always determine your wealth. It also depends on your savings rate as well. If you guys like me for my personal finance and investing content, make sure you hit that like button. Also consider joining my newsletter if you'd like to hear from me more regularly. Before we get into the exact strategy, there is something about building wealth on a lower income that a lot of financial advisors misunderstand or get wrong, and understanding this could be the difference between retiring broke and retiring rich. Here's a truth that nobody talks about. Your income doesn't necessarily determine your wealth, but your savings rate absolutely does. Let me show you the math to prove it. We have a high earner that's making $100,000 a year, saves 5% or $5,000 a year. And with that $5,000 invested after 30 years at 7% is now $472,000. Now, whereas on the other hand, we have somebody who makes $40,000 a year, but saves 15% of their income or $6,000 a year. After 30 years with the same 7% return, that portfolio is now worth $566,000. So the person who makes $40,000 still ends up with more money in their portfolio because they ended up saving a higher percentage of their income. And that's exactly what someone like Maria earning $32,000 a year did. Here's a 25-year progression of what this would look like. From years 1 to 5, or between the ages of 30 to 35, Maria had a $32,000 salary. She saved 12% of her income, or that's $3,840 a year. Between years 6 and 15, or between the ages of 36 to 45, she had a $36,000 average salary. She increased her savings rate to 15%, or $5,400 a year. And then from years 16 to 25, or the ages 46 to 55, on a $40,000 salary, she saved 18% or $7,200 a year. So the total amount invested over 25 years is $140,000. But the actual account value at age 55, assuming an average return rate of 7% each year, is $1.05 million. So the key insight here is that starting small, but being incredibly consistent, and even when getting small raises, still increasing her savings rate rather than her lifestyle rate. So if your income is on the lower side, no sweat, because necessity breeds discipline. When you don't have any money to waste, every dollar you save has to work harder, and that forced efficiency can actually accelerate your wealth building. As someone who grew up in a first-generation immigrant family and have a lot of family friends in similar positions when they first came to North America, this is how a lot of our generation and our people built wealth. By the way, guys, speaking of thrift shopping, I found this vase from London Drugs, and it was on sale, and it was 15 bucks. And I was like, I have to get this. It's so pretty. It matches my bookshelf. It's got that like boho-y vibe pattern thing. Honestly, it looks the exact same as those $100 vases from Crate and Barrel. I love finding good steals like that. Also, these flowers are my anniversary flowers from Kevin. He surprised me with them the other day out of nowhere. Are they pretty? September is our anniversary month, both dating and wedding. I just thought it was really pretty. So on our first date, Kevin shows up to my parents' house where I was living at the time with a gigantic bouquet of roses. He ended up taking me to a really nice Japanese restaurant that night for dinner, and then we ended up hanging out and talking for 5 or 6 hours. And then after a couple months of dating and getting to know each other, he takes me to his brother-in-law's 40th birthday. And after he parked the car, he looks over to me and he's like, "Hey, if anyone asks, you're my girlfriend, right?" But the tone that he kind of asked me in was like, almost like, kind of like, hey, like, can you do me a favor just so it's not embarrassing when we get in there? And then I remember saying, yeah, sure, like, I'll help you out. And then when we were inside, we were like chatting with people and stuff, and someone comes up to me and he was like, hey, by the way, do you know Kevin doesn't usually bring girls around? I didn't think too much about it like while I was there, but then I remember getting home that night and I was like, WTF just happened? I thought we were just going to a birthday. Let's talk about the habits of these millionaires that cost nothing. So what separates people who are low income but build wealth and low income who never build wealth has nothing to do with investment returns, like what they're actually buying in terms of stocks or market timing. Millionaires that started with low incomes, they all share the same few habits. The first one is that they are paying themselves first. So, for example, with Maria earlier, with the salary that she has, she sets up automatic transfers the day after payday. So that's $200 to her emergency fund and $300 to her investments. She never even sees the money after she gets paid, so she never misses it. The second habit is living like they make 20% less. So let's say Maria made $35,000. She would tell herself that she lived on $28,000. The difference of what she actually makes and what she tells herself that she makes or lives on is what goes straight to investments with no exceptions. The third habit is avoiding lifestyle inflation. So in the example of Maria, when she gets a raise, getting a $2,000 raise, $3,000 raise, she's not upgrading her apartment or buying a new car, which is often what people tend to do after they make more money. In her case, she actually upgraded her savings rate from 12% to 15%. The fourth habit is buying used everything. So cars, furniture, clothes. If it wasn't food or shelter, Maria has either bought it used or not at all. In fact, her 12-year-old Honda has saved her $40,000 compared to buying new cars. By the way, guys, video up top, if you are in the market for buying a new car and you're thinking whether you should lease, buy, or finance your vehicle, make sure you check it out up there. The fifth habit is investing in boring stuff. So in order to build wealth, you actually don't need to buy penny stocks. There's no get-rich-quick schemes needed, no day trading, no individual stocks even, and no crypto. With 7% returns on your money, all you need to do is invest in low-cost index funds every month for decades. By the way, guys, I have a video coming up shortly on how to make passive income with the index fund investing strategy. So make sure you subscribe to my channel for that upcoming video if you're interested. Okay, so here's the step-by-step system based on Maria's strategy. The first step is that you want to start with 1% of your income, no matter how small it is. So let's say you make $30,000 a year. 1% of your income is $300 a year or $25 a month. The second step is then we can then set a target to increase this by 1% every year. So in year one, if it's 1%, in year two, it might be 2%, in year three, it would be 3%, and you can see how that would build up to 15 or 20%. The next step is to automate everything. So automating transfers, investments, any automatic increases. If you're interested in learning how to save your first $10,000 with automations, I'll leave a video link up top. You're gonna love that video. I go over all the little tips and tricks that you can use to basically trick yourself into saving as much money as possible in the least amount of time as possible. The fourth step is to live below your means permanently, because when every single one of your raises is going to savings rather than lifestyle upgrades, you're going to get there much, much faster. And then the last step is to put that money into something like total stock market index funds. Two examples are FZROX and VTSAX, or just target date funds in general. Being simple, I think, is better than being complicated and picking a whole stock portfolio. Because people who build wealth on low incomes are not necessarily smarter or luckier at picking investments and picking individual stocks or getting good with market timing or because they got into Bitcoin at the right time. They do it simply just by being more disciplined and more consistent than anyone else. And that's basically what happens when you can't rely on a high income to bail you out in any way. You basically just develop these habits that end up creating wealth. Time and compound interest are your secret weapon when it comes to building wealth, even if you're on a low income. It's more powerful than any investment strategy, side hustle, day trading, anything like that. So let's start with time. When you start investing in your 20s or in your 30s with small amounts, that compound interest becomes absolutely magical. Let me show you a couple of different scenarios. The first one is what we call like the early starter. Okay, so this is somebody who at the age of 25 has started working, is able to invest or put away at least $2,000 a year for 10 years. That's $20,000 of money invested into the market. By the age of 65, with compound interest and time, that amount is now $542,000. Okay, so that's for the early starter who got started investing as soon as they started working full time. And then we have a later starter who starts at the age of 35. This person invests $2,000 a year for 30 years. They get to $60,000 a total amount invested. But by the age of 65, they have $472,000, which is actually less than the person who started investing at age 25, 10 years ago. And then we have the consistent investor, who's someone who invests from 25 to 65 and never stops. They invest $2,000 a year for 40 years of total, or total amount of $80,000 invested. And by age 65, they will have hit $1.068 million. So the earlier starter who actually invested less money ends up with more than the late starter who invested 3 times as much. And the person who invests consistently for 40 years has the biggest portfolio of all of these 3. So that's why, I would recommend people who are young, even if you're making minimum wage, the most valuable asset that you have when it comes to building wealth is your time, because you can never get it back once it's gone. So even if you're in your 20s, even $50 invested now, a month, that is going to be worth more than $200 a month invested in your 40s. That's how much time matters when it comes to investing. And if you're in your 30s, you still have 30 plus years for compound growth. That's still plenty of time to build wealth. If you are in your 40s or your 50s, you will need to be more aggressive with your savings rate, but it's absolutely not too late to start investing. So if we go back to the Maria example and we talk about her time advantage, if she started at the age of 30 investing $3,800 a year, by starting early and staying consistent, time is actually what does most of the heavy lifting. And her money, because she's able to be consistent, has had 25 years to compound and grow. Compound interest doesn't really care about your salary. It really only cares about time and consistency. So if you're a low earner who starts early, you're almost always going to beat a high income earner who starts late. Time is a very great equalizer when it comes to building wealth. So something that might change your mindset as a lower income millionaire, it's the mental shift that separates people who succeed from people who give up. So building wealth on a lower income does require a different mindset than what most people have. First of all, we got to shift from that, I don't have money, I can't afford it, I can't afford to invest, to I can't not afford to invest. So when you're on a lower income, you might think, oh, it's really tight to make ends meet. And you might feel like $100 a month is too much to invest. But when you realize that not investing that $100 that you have, it ends up costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential future wealth. And that really is the opportunity cost of not investing and holding cash, or just spending extra money on Uber Eats and alcohol and going out to eat at restaurants and stuff like that. The second shift is going from I need more money to I need better habits. So if you're not in a career trajectory or in a position where you can focus on earning more, then try to just focus on optimizing what you currently have, because a 20% savings rate on $35,000 actually beats a 5% savings rate on $80,000. The third shift is going from investing is risky to not investing that's risky. Because the biggest risk isn't market volatility. It's actually inflation eating away your purchasing power over 30 plus years. And then the last one is that common one that we always think about, right? The stock market isn't going to go away anytime soon. The stock market's been around for decades, and it's going to be around also for decades, as with any opportunity to make money in this world. So shifting from that, I'll start later, I'll start when I make more, I'll start when the time is right, to I'll start with what I have is key, because there's never going to be a perfect time. There's never going to be a perfect time to take a leap of faith. There's never going to be a perfect time to quit your job. There's never going to be time to start a YouTube channel. There's never going to be a perfect time to make money online. There's never going to be a perfect time to do the things that you want to do in life. And there's never going to be a perfect time to start investing. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Ready is a decision, not a time. Remember, ready is a decision, not a time. No one is ever ready. So if you reframe your perspective, it's not just like, hey, I can't become a millionaire because I only make $35,000. Rather, it's I'm going to be a millionaire on $35,000. Because when you change the way that you see things, the things that you see change. I think it's really important to celebrate small wins, not with spending lots of money, but just like a pat on the back. You hit $1,000 invested, give yourself a pat on the back. You hit $5,000 invested, give yourself a pat on the back, because every milestone matters. So thinking in decades, not days. So if you're constantly checking your account balances and your investment portfolios every single day, thinking about where you're going to be in 20, 30 years, that is going to take forever. We got to ignore the noise. Don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. Focus on your own progress and just leave your investment portfolio alone. Personally, I don't even check my investments or my stocks that often. I just buy things and I leave them alone for a long time. And then I'll just go back maybe like a year, 18 months later, and I'll check it. Or like Kevin will tell me, hey, the stock that we bought last year went up. I'm like, cool. When you set up automatic transfers to remove temptation, I think that makes a huge difference because the money hits your checking account and then that money automatically goes into your direct investing or self-direct account, meaning that you basically can't spend the money on any impulse purchases. So the difference between people who build wealth on low income and people who don't, again, it's not intelligence, it's not luck, it's just mindset. Because when you truly believe that you can become wealthy regardless of what income you make, then you end up making the decisions that you need to make it inevitable. If you guys like this video today, you're gonna love my other video on the best 5 high yield savings accounts in 2025. If you want to get up to a 4.5% return as of right now, I go over all of the current bank accounts that are paying those interest rates, everything you need to know about those accounts. They're all FDIC insured. Putting cash in some sort of interest-bearing investment is always recommended over a savings account that's basically paying you nothing. So make sure you check out that video up top there. Let me know down in the comments below what questions you might have about saving and building wealth on low income, and I will see you guys in the next video. Until next time,